She didn't know the collapsed man shivering violently in the rain outside her small Korean restaurant was worth billions, that his blood-soaked hands had built empires from ash, or that pulling him inside and pressing his frozen body against her chest to save him from hypothermia would seal both their fates forever. The moment her warmth flooded into his dying flesh, the moment her heartbeat synchronized with his fading pulse, something ancient and unbreakable locked into place inside Kong Min-ho's chest. He opened his eyes in that dim storage room and saw not just his savior but his entire future, while she saw only a broken stranger who needed saving. Both were right. Both were dangerously, irrevocably wrong. Welcome to Afrokorea Center, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. Amara Williams had been wiping down tables in her tiny restaurant for the past hour, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from working double shifts 6 days a week. Rain hammered against the windows of her hole-in-the-wall Korean fusion spot in Los Angeles, the kind of downpour that emptied streets and made smart people stay home. She should have closed an hour ago, but the thought of going back to her empty studio apartment held no appeal. At least here, surrounded by the smell of her grandmother's jjigae recipe and the hum of the ancient refrigerator, she felt less alone. Her phone buzzed with another text from her ex-boyfriend demanding she return his calls, and she deleted it without reading. Some chapters needed to stay closed. She was counting the register when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the rain or the distant traffic. A thud, heavy and final, like something collapsing. Amara moved to the window and peered through the streaked glass. A man lay crumpled against the brick wall across the alley, his expensive suit soaked through, his body shaking with violent tremors. Even from here she could see the wrongness in how he moved, the way hypothermia was shutting down his systems one by one. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind, the same words she'd repeated throughout Amara's childhood in Atlanta before they'd moved west. We don't walk past suffering, baby girl. Not when we have hands that can help and hearts that can care. Amara grabbed her coat and umbrella, cursing her inability to ignore someone in need, and ran out into the storm. Up close, the man was even worse than she'd thought. His lips had gone blue. His skin felt like ice when she touched his neck to check for a pulse, and his breathing came in shallow, dangerous gasps. He was dying right here in this dirty alley, and she had maybe minutes to do something about it. She tried shaking him awake, calling to him in English and then in her broken Korean, but he didn't respond. His eyes stayed closed, his body racked with shivers that were starting to slow, the final stage before the cold claimed him completely. With strength she didn't know she possessed, Amara hooked her arms under his shoulders and dragged him toward her restaurant. He was solid muscle beneath the wet clothes, heavy in a way that spoke of power and discipline, but adrenaline gave her the ability to move him. She kicked open the back door and pulled him into the storage room, the warmest space in the building thanks to the ancient boiler that rattled in the corner. She locked the door behind them and turned to assess the situation with the practical calm her grandmother had trained into her. This man needed his core temperature raised immediately, or he would die on her floor. Amara stripped off his jacket and shirt with shaking hands, revealing a torso covered in old scars and lean muscle. She grabbed every clean towel she had, rubbing his skin to stimulate circulation, but it wasn't enough. His breathing was getting shallower, his pulse weaker beneath her fingertips. She remembered her grandmother's stories about treating soldiers during the Korean War, about extreme measures in desperate times. Skin-to-skin contact was the fastest way to transfer body heat when hypothermia reached critical stages. It was also completely insane to consider with a stranger, but watching him die because she was too modest felt infinitely worse. She pulled off her own soaked shirt and pressed her body against his chest, wrapping her arms around him and pulling the emergency blankets she kept for winter power outages over both of them. His skin was ice against hers, stealing her warmth, but she held on tighter. His heart beat weakly against her chest, a rhythm she matched with her own breathing, willing him to stay alive through sheer force of will. Minutes passed like hours. Slowly, incrementally, she felt his body temperature begin to rise. His shivers intensified as his system tried to rewarm itself, and she held him through each violent tremor, her own body aching from the cold he'd transferred to her. Then his eyes opened. Dark, impossibly dark, with an intensity that stopped her breath even in this moment of crisis. He stared at her like she was the only real thing in a world of shadows, like every moment of his life had been leading to this one. His hand came up slowly, touching her face with reverence that felt wrong coming from someone she'd just pulled from death's door. He tried to speak, but his voice came out as barely a whisper in Korean she couldn't fully understand. She shushed him gently, keeping him pressed against her, continuing to share her body heat until she felt confident he would survive. What Amara couldn't know, was that across the city in a penthouse office, security footage was being reviewed by men in expensive suits. They watched the woman pull their boss from the alley, drag him inside, and disappear from the camera's view. One man smiled with cold satisfaction. Kong Min-ho had passed his test, the brutal initiation every heir to the Kong crime family endured to prove they could survive anything. But he'd done something unprecedented. He'd accepted help from a civilian, from a woman, from someone outside the organization. That simple act of trust after years of being trained never to show weakness had just marked Amara Williams as the most dangerous person in Minho's world, because he'd revealed his humanity to her. And in their business, humanity was the ultimate weakness. Hours later, Min-ho woke in a hospital bed with machines beeping around him and 4 lines snaking into his arms. His second-in-command, Seo Junwoo, sat in the chair beside the bed, his expression carefully neutral in the way that meant he was furious. Min-ho's memories came back in fragments. The test, the staged abandonment in the cold rain, the hypothermia setting in faster than anyone had anticipated. Then her, the woman with warm brown skin and kind eyes, who'd pulled him inside and held him against her body without asking for anything in return. He tried to sit up, but pain lanced through his chest. Junwoo was at his side immediately, pressing him back down with surprising gentleness for someone who looked like he bench-pressed cars for fun. "You almost died," Junwoo said in Korean, his voice tight with controlled anger. "The test was supposed to last 12 hours, but your core temperature dropped to dangerous levels in 4. If that woman hadn't found you, if she hadn't done what she did to warm you up, you would have died, proving a point to the elders." Min-ho's hand clenched into a fist. "Where is she?" he asked, and the question came out more desperate than he'd intended. Junwoo's expression shifted into something complicated. "We had her followed home to make sure she was safe, since she witnessed you at your most vulnerable. She runs a small restaurant, lives alone, seems to have no connection to any of our rivals or the police. She's clean, Min-ho. Just a woman who helped a stranger. Just a woman who saved my life," Min-ho corrected, and felt something shift in his chest, something that had been dormant for the 32 years he'd spent building walls around anything resembling genuine emotion. He'd been raised to view kindness as weakness, compassion as a liability, and trust as the fastest path to betrayal. His father had beaten those lessons into him from childhood, preparing him to take over an empire built on fear and absolute control. But this woman, Amara, her name felt right even though he hadn't asked for it yet, had seen him at his most broken and hadn't exploited it. Hadn't called the police or taken photos for blackmail or left him to die. She just helped like it was the most natural thing in the world. The next morning, Min-ho discharged himself against medical advice and had his driver take him to Amara's restaurant. It was closed, but he could see her through the window, moving between tables with easy grace as she set up for the lunch rush. She wore jeans that hugged curves his hands remembered pressing against in that storage room, and an oversized sweatshirt that somehow made her look both comfortable and beautiful. Her natural hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she hummed while she worked, completely unaware that the man she'd saved was watching her with an intensity that would have terrified her if she'd known what it meant. Min-ho felt something click into place inside him, something irrevocable and absolute. This woman was his. She just didn't know it yet. He waited until she unlocked the front door before walking in, his movements still slightly stiff from the hypothermia's lingering effects. She looked up from arranging menus, and her eyes went wide with recognition and concern. "Oh my God," she said, rushing toward him with the same instinctive care she'd shown in the alley. "You should be in a hospital. You almost died. Are you okay? Did you get checked out by a doctor?" Her hands fluttered near him, wanting to touch but holding back, and he found himself wanting those hands on him again with an intensity that bordered on addiction. "I'm fine because of you," he said in careful English, his accent thick but understandable. "You saved my life. Thank you is not enough, but thank you." Amara waved off his gratitude with the kind of deflection that told him she wasn't used to being appreciated. Anyone would have done the same thing, she said, but they both knew that wasn't true. Most people would have called emergency services and moved on with their lives, not stripped down and held a stranger through the worst of hypothermia's grip. "You're different," Minho said, and the words came out rougher than he'd intended. "Most people walk past suffering. You ran toward it." She laughed nervously, a sound that did things to his chest he didn't have words for. "My grandmother raised me to help when I can. Simple as that." Nothing about you is simple, he thought but didn't say. Instead, he pulled out a business card and set it on the nearest table. "If you ever need anything, call me. Anytime, any reason." She picked up the card and her eyebrows rose. "Kong Min-ho, CEO of Kong Industries. Oh wow, I guess I saved someone important." "You saved someone who owes you a debt that can never be repaid," he corrected. "In my culture, life debts are serious. You gave me my life back. That means something." She studied him with those warm eyes that seemed to see past his expensive suit and polished exterior to something real underneath. "You don't owe me anything," she said firmly. "I'm just glad you're alive. But I'll keep your card in case I ever need help, okay? That seems fair." She had no idea what she'd just agreed to. No concept that in his world, owing someone meant complete loyalty, absolute protection, and a connection that didn't break just because it was inconvenient. Over the following days, Min-ho found himself doing something he'd never done before. He thought about Amara constantly. Her smile haunted his dreams. Her kindness played on repeat in his mind during business meetings where he should have been focused on expansion strategies and territorial negotiations. He started having his car drive past her restaurant, just to catch glimpses of her through the windows. He had Jun-woo compile a full report on her life, and what he learned made his protective instincts flare. She'd moved to Los Angeles from Atlanta 3 years ago after her grandmother died, leaving her completely alone in the world. She worked brutal hours to keep her small restaurant afloat, sent money back to church programs that fed homeless people, and had exactly 2 friends she saw regularly. She was isolated, vulnerable, and completely unprotected. It made him furious and protective in equal measure. The decision formed without conscious thought. He would make sure she was taken care of whether she knew about it or not. He started small. Her restaurant's landlord, who'd been threatening to raise her rent to unaffordable levels, suddenly became very reasonable after a visit from Min-ho's lawyers. The supply company that provided her ingredients offered her a loyalty discount she hadn't asked for. Her ancient refrigerator mysteriously got replaced with a top-of-the-line model after a service call she didn't remember scheduling. Min-ho watched it all from the shadows, feeling satisfaction each time he smoothed a problem from her path. He told himself he was just repaying the life debt. He knew he was lying. 2 weeks after the night she saved him, Min-ho finally walked into her restaurant during operating hours. It was late afternoon, the lull between lunch and dinner service, and only 3 other customers occupied tables in the small space. Amara looked up from the register, and her face lit up with a smile that made his carefully constructed control slip dangerously. "Mr. Kong," she said, genuine pleasure in her voice. "I was hoping you'd come back. I wanted to make sure you were really okay." He sat at the bar counter, the closest seat to where she stood, needing to be near her with an urgency that should have alarmed him. "I'm more than okay, thanks to you. I came to ask if you'd have dinner with me. To properly thank you." Her smile faltered slightly, uncertainty creeping in. "That's really not necessary. I'm just glad I could help." "It's necessary to me," Min-ho said, and let some of the intensity he usually kept hidden bleed into his voice. "Please, let me take you somewhere nice. Let me show my gratitude properly." She bit her lip, a gesture that made him want to taste that lip himself, and he saw the moment she decided to say yes. Okay, but nowhere too fancy. I don't have clothes for fancy restaurants. Tomorrow night. I'll pick you up at 7. Wear whatever makes you comfortable. She laughed, that nervous sound again. You're very persistent. You have no idea, he thought, watching the way afternoon light played across her skin. The next evening, Min-ho picked her up in his personal car, not the armored town car with drivers and security that usually transported him. He wanted this to feel normal, even though nothing about his feelings for her was remotely normal. She came out wearing a simple dress that showed off her curves, and his hands tightened on the steering wheel with the need to touch her. You look beautiful, he said, and watched color bloom across her cheeks. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. The restaurant he'd chosen was upscale but not ostentatious, the kind of place where they could talk without shouting over noise. Throughout dinner he learned pieces of her story. Her grandmother who'd raised her after her parents died. Her love of cooking. Her dream of eventually opening a bigger restaurant that could hire people who needed second chances. She talked about food the way other people talked about art, with passion and reverence, and he found himself fascinated by every word. When she asked about his work, he gave her the carefully edited version. Import-export business, mostly dealing with Asian markets. Real estate investments. Corporate acquisitions. All true, just missing the parts about how much of that business existed in legal gray areas and outright criminal enterprises. She seemed satisfied with the explanation, asking thoughtful questions about international trade that showed she was smarter than she gave herself credit for. I always wanted to travel, she admitted. See Korea, visit the places my grandmother told stories about. Maybe someday. I'll take you, the words came out before he could stop them. Whenever you want. I have business there regularly. You could see everything. She laughed like he was joking, but he was completely serious. The thought of showing her soul, of watching her experience his homeland's beauty, of having her in his primary territory where he could protect her completely, it appealed to something primitive in his chest. The dinner stretched into hours. They talked about everything and nothing, and Min-ho realized he was more relaxed than he'd been in years. With her, he didn't have to be the ruthless CEO or the feared heir to a crime family. He could just be a man enjoying a woman's company. When he finally drove her home, he walked her to her door like a gentleman, fighting every instinct that screamed to kiss her, claim her, make sure she understood she was already his in every way that mattered. Thank you for tonight, Amara said, her hand on her doorknob, her eyes soft in the porch light. I had a really nice time. So did I, Min-ho admitted. Can I see you again? She smiled. Like that. How about you come to my restaurant for lunch tomorrow? I'll make you something special. It's a date, he said, and watched her blush again before disappearing inside. He waited until he heard her lock and gauge before walking back to his car, already planning how to speed up this courtship. He wanted her with an intensity that was becoming physically painful, but he also wanted her willing. Wanted her to choose him because she felt the same connection he did, not because he'd overwhelmed her with his power and resources. The next morning everything changed. Min-ho was in a meeting with his father's old associates when Jun-woo burst in. His face pale with urgency. We have a situation, he said in Korean, and Min-ho's blood went cold at his second's tone. He excused himself and followed Jun-woo to a private office where security footage played on multiple screens. The images showed Amara's restaurant. Showed 3 men entering through the back door during early morning prep. Showed them grabbing her, covering her mouth when she tried to scream, dragging her toward a van in the alley. The timestamp said this had happened 20 minutes ago. Min-ho felt something break open inside him, something violent and absolute. Who? He asked. His voice deadly calm in the way that made even seasoned criminals nervous. Jun-woo pulled up photos on his tablet. Lee faction, he said. The group that's been pushing into our territory for months. They must have found out about your interest in her and decided to use her as leverage. Min-ho's hand crushed the edge of the desk he was gripping. Where did they take her? We're tracking the van now. Looks like they're headed toward their warehouse in the industrial district. Boss, we can negotiate for her return. We can offer them territory concessions in exchange for her safe release. Minho pulled his gun from its holster and checked the magazine with practiced ease. No negotiating, he said flatly. We go in, we get her back, and we make sure everyone involved understands what happens when they touch what's mine. 30 minutes later, Minho stood outside a warehouse with 20 of his best men, all armed, all ready to burn the building down if necessary. He'd spent the drive imagining every terrible thing that might be happening to Amara inside, and each image made him more determined to paint the walls with the blood of anyone who'd hurt her. Junwoo touched his arm. We need to be smart about this. If we go in guns blazing, they might kill her before we can reach her. Minho knew his second was right, but the primal part of his brain didn't care about strategy. It only cared about getting to Amara, making sure she was safe, eliminating every threat to her existence. Still, he forced himself to breathe, to think, to plan. You're right. We go in quiet. Disable their security. Take out guards silently. Then we get her out before they know we're here. They moved like shadows through the warehouse, Minho's training from his father's brutal preparation kicking in automatically. 3 guards went down without making a sound. 2 more in the next corridor. Then they heard voices, Korean mixed with English, and Minho followed the sound to a storage room. Through a small window, he could see Amara tied to a chair, her lip bleeding, her eyes showing fear but also defiance. A man stood over her, speaking in accented English about how she was going to help them send a message to Kong Minho. She spat blood at his feet. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice shaking but strong. I barely know the man. You saved his life, the man said, backhanding her hard enough to snap her head to the side. That makes you valuable. Now be quiet while we film our ransom video. Minho didn't remember making the decision to move. One moment he was assessing the situation, the next he was through the door with his gun raised. The first shot took out the man who'd hit Amara. The second dropped the guard near the door. Chaos erupted as his team flooded in, neutralizing threats with brutal efficiency. Minho went straight to Amara, cutting through her restraints with the knife he always carried. She looked up at him with eyes that should have been terrified but instead showed relief and something deeper. You came, she whispered. Of course I came, he said, pulling her against his chest, feeling her warmth, confirming she was alive and real. You're mine to protect now. Nobody touches you and lives. Did you think I would leave you here? The fight was brief and decisive. Minho's men were better trained, better armed, and motivated by their boss's barely controlled fury. When it was over, 6 of Lee faction's men were dead and 3 more were zip-tied and waiting for interrogation. Minho gathered Amara in his arms and carried her out of the warehouse, ignoring her protests that she could walk. You're hurt, he said, his voice rougher than he'd intended. You're in shock. Let me take care of you. She stopped protesting and let her head rest against his shoulder. Why did they take me, she asked quietly. What did they mean about sending you a message? Minho's jaw clenched. Because I made the mistake of caring about you where people could see. Because in my world, anything you love becomes a weapon your enemies can use against. He took her to his penthouse, the most secure location he controlled, and called his personal doctor to check her injuries. While the doctor worked, Minho stood by the window, his hands shaking with adrenaline crash and residual terror. He'd almost lost her, come so close to having the only real thing in his life ripped away by violence he'd spent years cultivating. Amara's voice pulled him from his dark thoughts. Minho, she said softly, and he turned to find her looking at him with those eyes that saw too much. What aren't you telling me? What exactly is your business? He could have lied, should have lied. But she deserved truth after what she'd just survived because of him. I'm not just a CEO, he admitted. My family, we control certain enterprises that exist outside the law. Territory, protection, import operations that governments don't approve. I'm what they call a yakuza, though that's a Japanese term. In Korean we call ourselves something different. But the meaning is the same. I'm a gangster, Amara. Criminal. And caring about you put you in danger. She was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Then should I be afraid of you? The question pierced something in his chest. Of me, never. I would cut off my own hand before I'd hurt you. But of my world, yes. You should be terrified. People die in my world. They disappear. They get used as leverage. What happened today will happen again because my enemies now know you matter to me. So I'm giving you a choice. Walk away now. I'll set you up somewhere safe, somewhere far from Los Angeles, with enough money to start over. You'll never see me again. Or stay with me, let me protect you properly, and accept that danger comes with me. But know this. If you stay, you're mine. Completely. I don't share, I don't let go. And I will eliminate anyone who tries to take you from me. Choose. Amara stood up, ignoring the doctor's protests that she should rest, and walked over to where Minho stood rigid by the window. She reached up and cupped his face, her small hands warm against his skin, and he felt himself leaning into her touch like a man starved for gentle contact. I should choose the safe option, she said quietly. I should run far away from you and your dangerous world and never look back. But when I was tied to that chair, when I thought I might die, all I could think was that I hadn't told you how I felt. That I'd wasted our dinner talking about safe things instead of admitting that I haven't stopped thinking about you since the night I pulled you out of that alley. So I'm choosing to stay. I'm choosing you. Even knowing what you are. Even understanding the danger. Because apparently I'm terrible at self-preservation. Something broke open in Minho's chest. Something he'd kept locked down for decades of surviving in a world that punished weakness. He pulled her against him and kissed her, pouring every ounce of possession and devotion and barely controlled need into the press of his mouth against hers. She melted into him, her body soft everywhere his was hard. Her response telling him she felt this too, this impossible connection that made no logical sense. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. You're mine now, he said, making it both promise and warning. I'll kill to keep you safe. I'll burn down this entire city if that's what it takes. And I'll never let you go. Not now, not ever. Do you understand what you're agreeing to? She looked at him with clear eyes. I'm agreeing to you. All of you. The good and the dangerous and the complicated. But Minho, I need you to understand something too. I'm not going to be locked away like some delicate thing you have to protect from the world. If I'm choosing this life, then I'm choosing it fully. That means knowing what you really do, meeting your people, understanding your world. No more secrets. He opened his mouth to argue, every protective instinct screaming to keep her separate from the ugliness of his business, but she put her finger over his lips. No secrets, she repeated. Either you trust me enough to see all of you, or this doesn't work. So which is it going to be? Minho made a decision that would change everything. Okay, he said, knowing he was crossing a line he'd sworn never to cross. No secrets. I'll show you everything, introduce you to everyone. You'll understand exactly what my world looks like. But Amara, once you see it, once you're truly in it, there's no going back. The people who work for me will know you belong to me. My enemies will see you as my weakness. Every choice from that point forward carries weight. Are you absolutely sure? She nodded, and he saw no hesitation in her expression. I'm sure. Show me your world, Minho. Let me understand the man I'm choosing. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring the taste of her, the warmth of her response. Then he'd show her everything, and pray she didn't run when she saw the monster he truly was. The next week, Minho took Amara to a private meeting of his inner circle. 12 men and 3 women, all of them dangerous in their own right, all of them owing their loyalty to the Kong family. They gathered in a secured conference room at one of Minho's legitimate businesses, and the tension when Amara walked in was thick enough to cut. Junwoo stood immediately, offering Amara his seat with a respect that made the others straighten in their chairs. Boss is bringing in someone new, one of the younger guys muttered in Korean, not bothering to hide his disdain. An outsider who doesn't know our world. This is a mistake. Minho's voice cut across the room like a blade. Speak English or stay silent. Everyone here will show respect to Amara Williams, or they can find employment elsewhere. Am I clear? The room chorused agreement, and Minho guided Amara to sit beside him at the head of the table. He spent the next hour walking her through the reality of his operations. The protection businesses that kept legitimate shops safe from actual criminals, the import networks that, yes, sometimes involved goods that bypassed customs, the real estate holdings that provided cover for money that needed laundering. He explained the hierarchy, the rules that governed their world, the lines they didn't cross. No drugs, no human trafficking, no targeting civilians. They were criminals, but they had codes. When he finished, Amara sat quietly for a moment, processing everything. Then she asked the question he'd been dreading. Have you killed people? The room went silent. Every eye focused on their boss, waiting to see if he'd lie to protect her innocence. He didn't. Yes, Minho said simply. Not often and never without cause. But in my world, sometimes violence is the only language certain people understand. If someone threatens my family, my people, if they cross lines we've made clear are uncrossable, then I handle it personally. Does that answer your question? She looked at him for a long moment, and he couldn't read her expression. Then she said, as long as you never lie to me about it, I can accept it. I don't like it. I wish you lived in a different world. But I understand that this is your reality, and pretending otherwise helps no one. The room released a collective breath, and Minho felt something settle in his chest. She wasn't running, wasn't judging. She was seeing him fully and choosing to stay anyway. The meeting continued, and Minho watched Amara's quick mind process information, ask intelligent questions, and slowly earn the grudging respect of people who'd initially dismissed her as a liability. By the end, even the guy who'd muttered about outsiders was explaining security protocols to her with genuine enthusiasm. That night, back at his penthouse, Amara stood on his balcony overlooking the city lights. Minho found her there, wrapped in one of his shirts because she'd started keeping clothes at his place without either of them formally discussing her moving in. You okay? He asked, sliding his arms around her waist from behind. She leaned back against his chest. I'm processing, she admitted. Today was a lot. Seeing your world, understanding what you really do, meeting people who've killed for you. It's not exactly what I imagined when I pulled a frozen stranger into my storage room. Do you regret it? Minho asked, even though the question terrified him. Regret saving you? Absolutely not. Regret falling for you? She turned in his arms to face him. Impossible. But Minho, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that no matter how dangerous things get, you won't shut me out. Don't try to protect me by pushing me away or making decisions for me. I'm choosing this life with my eyes open. Let me be your partner, not just something you guard. Minho cupped her face, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. Promise to try. But understand that every instinct I have screams to lock you somewhere safe where nothing can touch you. Fighting that instinct goes against my nature. She smiled. Then we'll both have to compromise. I'll try not to be reckless, and you'll try not to be controlling. Deal, he agreed, and sealed it with a kiss that started gentle but quickly became something more urgent. His hands slid under the shirt she wore, rediscovering the curves he'd memorized by touch. She gasped against his mouth, her fingers clutching his shoulders, and he lifted her easily, carrying her to his bedroom where he proceeded to show her exactly how much she meant to him through touch and whispered words and attention that made her forget her own name. Hours later, they lay tangled together in his sheets, Amara's head on his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her bare shoulder. I love you, he said into the darkness, the words feeling both terrifying and inevitable. I know it's fast. I know it's probably insane. But I've never felt this way about anyone, and I need you to know. There was a pause, and Minho's chest tightened with fear that he'd said too much too soon. Then Amara's voice came softly. I love you too. I think I have since you first walked back into my restaurant. When you looked at me like I was precious instead of just the help. Like I mattered beyond what I could do for you. You matter more than anything, Minho said fiercely. You're the only real thing in my world of lies and violence. The only person who makes me want to be better than what I was raised to become. The next morning, Minho woke to find Amara already up, standing by the window in his shirt again, her silhouette backlit by dawn. He was reaching for her when his phone erupted with urgent calls. He answered to hear Junwoo's tense voice. "We have a problem, boss." Lee faction didn't take the message. "They've issued a formal challenge. They want you and 10 of your men to meet them tonight at neutral ground. Winner takes disputed territory and," his second paused, "they want the girl present. They're saying if you don't bring her, they'll assume you care more about her safety than your reputation, and they'll use that weakness to move against you publicly." Min-ho felt rage flood his system. "Absolutely not. I won't use her as a bargaining chip." "Then you look weak, and weakness in our world invites aggression. Boss, I hate saying this, but they've backed you into a corner. Either you bring her and show strength, or you leave her behind and confirm their accusation that she's made you soft." Min-ho hung up and immediately looked at Amara, who'd clearly heard enough of the conversation to understand the situation. "You're not going to leave me here," she said flatly before he could speak. "If this meeting is happening because of me, then I'm going to be there." "You don't understand what you're asking for," Min-ho said, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "These meetings can turn violent. People die at negotiations when tempers flare. I need you somewhere safe. And I need to be where I said I'd be, as your partner." She crossed to him, her expression determined. "You promised not to shut me out. Don't break that promise in less than 24 hours. Let me come with you. Let me show your world and your enemies that I'm not some delicate thing that makes you weak. That I make you stronger because you have something worth fighting for." He wanted to argue, wanted to lock her in his most secure safe house and handle this meeting himself. But he'd made a promise, and Amara was right about one thing. Keeping her hidden only confirmed his enemies' belief that she was his weakness. Maybe it was time to show them she was his strength. That evening, Min-ho brought Amara to the neutral meeting ground wearing Kevlar hidden under elegant clothes and surrounded by his most trusted guards. Lee faction was already there with their own contingent, and Min-ho saw the moment their leader spotted Amara, saw the calculation in the man's eyes. "So you brought her," Lee Tae-min said in Korean before switching to English. "The woman who makes the great Kong Min-ho soft. Tell me, does she know what you really do? Does she know how many men you've killed?" "She knows everything," Amara said clearly, stepping forward before Min-ho could stop her. "She knows he's dangerous. Knows he's skilled to protect what's his. Knows he built his empire on strength and strategy. And she's not afraid because she also knows he's loyal, protective, and honorable in ways men like you will never understand." Lee Tae-min's smile turned cold. "Honorable? That's an interesting word for a gangster. Tell me, woman, do you think you can change him? Make him soft and domesticated like some pet?" Amara's laugh was sharp. "I don't want to change him. I want him exactly as he is. The difference between us is that I see his strength where you only see opportunity for exploitation. That's why you'll lose tonight." The tension in the warehouse ratcheted up several notches. Min-ho felt pride surge through him at Amara's courage, even as terror clawed at his throat at having her this exposed. The negotiation began, both sides laying out their positions regarding territory boundaries and protection agreements. It should have been straightforward, but Lee faction kept pushing, demanding concessions that would have made Min-ho look weak. He refused each one calmly, offering reasonable alternatives that protected his interests without being unreasonable. But Tae-min wasn't interested in reasonable. He wanted humiliation. Finally, the other boss stood abruptly. "I'll make you a deal, Kong. My men against yours, a simple contest of strength. 5 fighters each. Winners take all the disputed territory. Unless you're too afraid to risk your people." It was a trap, and everyone in the room knew it. Lee faction was known for brutal street fighters who'd spent years in underground fighting rings. But refusing would look like cowardice, would invite further challenges. Min-ho was calculating odds and strategies when Amara spoke again. "We'll fight." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Min-ho grabbed her arm gently. "Well, absolutely not. You're not a trained fighter. You'll get hurt." She looked at him with steady eyes. "My grandmother made sure all her grandchildren knew how to defend themselves. I'm not helpless, Min-ho. And I'm tired of being treated like I am. Let me prove I belong in your world. Do this one thing for me. Every protective instinct screamed at him to refuse, but he'd promised to trust her, to let her be his partner. Against all logic, he nodded. One match. You against whoever they choose. The moment you're in real danger, I'm stopping it. Lee Taemin's laugh was ugly. Fine. My fighter against your woman. When she loses, you concede the territory and admit she's made you weak. Min-ho's hand clenched into a fist, but Amara squeezed his arm reassuringly. I won't lose, she said quietly. Trust me. The fighters cleared a space in the center of the warehouse. Taemin's choice stepped forward, a woman nearly 6 feet tall with visible muscle and scars that spoke of countless fights. Amara looked small in comparison, her curves and softer appearance seeming fragile against the other fighter's obvious power. Min-ho's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. If she got seriously hurt because he'd allowed this, he'd never forgive himself. The fight started fast. The other woman came in aggressive, throwing heavy punches meant to end things quickly. But Amara moved like water, dodging and redirecting rather than trying to match strength for strength. Min-ho recognized the style now. Brazilian jiu-jitsu mixed with something else, maybe Krav Maga. His woman had been seriously trained, and she'd kept it hidden. The larger fighter grew frustrated, her attacks becoming wilder. Amara waited for her opening, then struck with precision. She got inside the other woman's guard, swept her legs, and followed her to the ground where technique mattered more than size. Within 90 seconds, she had the fighter in a submission hold that forced a tap out or risk a broken arm. The warehouse went silent. Amara stood up, breathing hard but victorious, and walked back to Min-ho without showering or celebration. Her eyes found his. Still think I make you weak? He pulled her against him, not caring who saw, not caring about the shocked stares from both sides. You make me invincible, he said roughly. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Don't ever doubt that. The rest of the meeting concluded quickly. Lee faction conceded the territory as agreed, though Taemin's parting glare promised this wasn't over. Min-ho didn't care. He'd won the negotiation, kept his territory, and watched the woman he loved prove she could hold her own in his dangerous world. On the drive back to the penthouse, Amara's adrenaline finally crashed. Her hands started shaking, and Min-ho pulled her onto his lap in the back of the car. You were incredible, he murmured against her hair. Terrifying but incredible. I'm never letting you fight again if I can help it, but incredible. She laughed shakily. My grandmother always said a woman needs to know how to protect herself because the world isn't always kind. I never thought I'd use those skills to win territory for a crime boss. Is this my life now? This is our life, Min-ho corrected. And yes, sometimes it's going to be dangerous and strange and nothing like what you imagined. But I promise to make it worth it. To give you everything you deserve and more. Speaking of which, he pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. I was going to wait for a romantic moment, but after watching you fight for us tonight, I can't wait anymore. Amara Desiree Williams, will you marry me? He opened the box to reveal a ring that made her gasp, a deep blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds that caught the passing streetlights like captured stars. Min-ho, she breathed, tears filling her eyes. This is crazy. We've only known each other a few weeks. People will think we've lost our minds. I don't care what people think, he said fiercely. I know what I want, and I want you as my wife. I want the world to know you belong to me and I belong to you. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to give you children and build a family that's nothing like the cold, violent one I grew up in. Yes, Amara. Make me the happiest man alive and say yes. She was crying now, but smiling through the tears. God help me, yes. I'll marry you, Min-ho. Even though you're dangerous and possessive and you'll probably drive me crazy. He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her with all the passion and devotion burning in his chest, and she kissed him back just as fiercely. The next few weeks passed in a blur of wedding planning and continued tension with Lee faction. Minho moved Amara's things into his penthouse officially, and she closed her restaurant temporarily to focus on their upcoming marriage. His mother flew in from Seoul, and Minho braced himself for the meeting. Park Hye-jin was elegant, traditional, and had very specific ideas about who her son should marry. An American woman with no connection to their world was definitely not on the approved list. The dinner where they met was tense from the moment introductions finished. Minho's mother looked Amara up and down with critical eyes and spoke in rapid Korean. "She's pretty enough, I suppose, but what family does she come from? What connections does she bring to strengthen our position? Does she even speak Korean?" Minho answered in English, forcing his mother to switch languages. "Amara comes from a good family. Her grandmother was an incredible woman who raised her with strong values. She speaks some Korean and is learning more every day. And mother, I love her. That's all that should matter." "Love," his mother scoffed. "Love doesn't build empires or protect territories. Strategic marriages do. This girl is going to be a liability, you mark my words. She'll make you soft, distract you from business, probably get herself killed by your enemies within a year." Before Minho could defend Amara, she spoke up herself in careful Korean. "Mrs. Park, I understand your concerns. I know I'm not what you imagined for your son. But I love him with everything I am, and I'm stronger than I look. I've already proven I can handle his world. I'm not going anywhere." Hye-jin's eyebrows rose with surprise, then something like grudging respect. "So you do speak Korean. And you have spirit. That's something at least. But understand this, girl. My son's world will chew you up and spit you out if you're not careful. People will target you to hurt him. They'll use you as leverage, as bait, as a weapon. Are you truly prepared for that life?" "I'm prepared to face anything as long as Minho is beside me," Amara said firmly. "And I hope that eventually you'll see I'm good for him. That I make him happy in ways power and territory never could." The older woman studied her for a long moment before nodding slightly. "We'll see. Time will tell if you're as strong as you claim. For now, I'll withhold judgment. But make my son weak, and I'll remove you from his life myself." "Understood." After his mother left, Minho pulled Amara into his arms. "I'm sorry about her. She's old-fashioned and controlling and probably always will be. Don't let her threats scare you." "She doesn't scare me," Amara said, though her hands trembled slightly. "But she's not wrong about the dangers. I saw how Lee faction looked at me. Like I was a target painted bright red. Minho, what if something happens and you're not there to protect me? What if I become the weakness your mother thinks I am?" He tilted her face up, making her meet his eyes. "Then you fight like you did at that warehouse. You survive like you've been surviving your whole life. And you trust that I will always come for you no matter what. You're not my weakness, Amara. You're my reason for being stronger than I've ever been before." The wedding was planned for 3 weeks away, a blend of Korean and American traditions that would take place at Minho's private estate outside the city. But 2 days before the ceremony, everything went wrong. Amara was at a final dress fitting with Junwoo's wife Minji, who'd become a surprising friend, when masked men burst into the boutique. They moved with military precision, taking out Minho's guards before anyone could react. Amara tried to run, tried to fight, but there were too many. She felt the sharp sting of a needle in her neck, and the world went blurry around the edges. Minji was screaming her name. Then everything went black. She woke in a concrete room with her hands zip-tied to a metal chair. Her head pounded, and her mouth tasted like chemicals. Across from her sat Lee Tae-min, his smile vicious and triumphant. "Welcome back, Miss Williams. Or should I say, almost Mrs. Kong. I'm afraid you're going to miss your wedding. You see, I've decided that taking you from Minho will hurt him more than any territory loss ever could. So you're going to help me send him a message." He pulled out a phone and started recording video. "Tell him you're alive for now. Tell him that if he wants to see you again, he'll give up everything he's built and walk away from his empire. Otherwise, you die slowly, and I make sure he watches every moment." Amara looked directly into the camera, her voice steady despite her terror. Min-ho, don't you dare give up anything for me. You hear me? Don't let this man win. I love you and I trust you to do what needs to be done. Don't make me a weakness. Make me a reason to destroy anyone who thinks they can use me against you. Taemin's hand cracked across her face hard enough to snap her head to the side. Stupid girl. You just signed your own death warrant. He raised his hand to hit her again, but a massive explosion rocked the building. The walls shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then the door burst open, and Min-ho stormed in with his entire security force, guns drawn. His expression more terrifying than anything Amara had ever seen. He looked like death incarnate. His expensive suit was splattered with blood that clearly wasn't his. His eyes held a cold fury that made even his own men step back slightly. He crossed the room in 3 strides and put a bullet in Taemin's knee before the other man could even reach for his weapon. That's for touching her, Min-ho said coldly. Then he shot the other knee. That's for threatening her. Then he raised the gun to Taemin's head. And this is for making me imagine a world without her in it. Wait, Amara said, her voice stopping Min-ho's finger on the trigger. Don't kill him yet. Make him suffer the way he made me suffer. Make him understand what it costs to come after what's yours. Then end him. Min-ho's smile was terrible and beautiful. As you wish. He turned to Junwoo. Take him to the warehouse. You know what to do. Make it last. Then he was cutting Amara's restraints and pulling her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. I thought I'd lost you, he said roughly against her hair. When they sent that video, when I saw him hit you, I nearly lost my mind. I called in every favor, activated every resource, tore through half his organization to find you. Don't ever scare me like that again. I won't survive it. She clung to him just as tightly. How did you find me so fast? He pulled back enough to show her the small device he pulled from her engagement ring. I had a tracker installed in your ring the day I gave it to you. Paranoid maybe, but it meant I always knew where you were. The moment they took you, I knew exactly where to start looking. That night, back at the penthouse with extra security stationed everywhere, Amara took a long shower trying to wash away the fear and adrenaline. When she emerged, she found Min-ho sitting on the edge of their bed, his head in his hands. She went to him immediately, kneeling between his legs. Hey, she said softly. I'm okay. We're okay. He looked at her with eyes that held too much pain. I almost lost you because of my world. Because I brought you into this life of violence and danger. Maybe my mother was right. Maybe you'd be safer if you walked away. Started over somewhere I can't touch you. Somewhere my enemies can't reach you. She grabbed his face between her hands. Min-ho Park, don't you dare. Don't you dare try to push me away now. Chose this life. Chose you. And yes, today was terrifying, but I survived because you came for me. Because we're stronger together than apart. I'm going to have nightmares about this for the rest of my life, he admitted. About all the ways I could have been too late. All the things he could have done to you before I got there. Then we'll have those nightmares together, Amara said firmly. And we'll wake up and remind each other that we survived. That we won. That we're still here, still choosing each other despite everything. Now stop trying to be noble and protective and make love to me. I need to feel alive. I need to feel you. I need to know we're real and here and okay. He needed no further invitation. He pulled her onto the bed and proceeded to show her with his hands and mouth and body exactly how much she meant to him, how terrified he'd been, how grateful he was that she'd survived. Their coupling was desperate and passionate, a celebration of life and survival and unbreakable connection. The wedding took place as planned 2 days later, though security was tripled and every guest was thoroughly vetted. Amara walked down the aisle in a dress that blended traditional Korean and American elements. Her natural hair styled in an elegant updo with delicate flowers woven through it. Min-ho stood at the altar in a traditional hanbok, and when he saw her, tears actually formed in his eyes. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, and she was choosing him despite knowing everything he was. The ceremony was conducted in both English and Korean, honoring both their heritages. When it came time for vows, Min-ho spoke first. Amara, you saved my life the night we met. But you've saved me every day since by choosing to see the man I am beneath the monster I sometimes have to be. You make me want to be better, kinder, more worthy of your love. I promise to protect you with everything I have. To honor your strength while keeping you safe. To love you fiercely for all my days. You're my heart, my home, my everything. Amara's own vows came through tears. Minho, you showed me that love doesn't have to be soft and safe to be real. That sometimes the most powerful love stories are the ones built in darkness and danger, where two people choose each other against all logic and reason. You see me, truly see me, in ways no one else ever has. You make me feel precious and powerful and perfectly loved exactly as I am. I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes. To be your partner in all things. To love you completely, danger and all, for the rest of my life. They exchanged rings, kissed as husband and wife, and faced their combined families and organizations as a united force. The reception was beautiful and surprisingly joyful given the violence of recent weeks. Even Minho's mother seemed to soften slightly, especially after she saw how her son looked at his new bride. 3 months later, Amara missed her period. Then another week passed and another. She took 3 pregnancy tests in the bathroom of their penthouse, her hands shaking as she waited for results. All 3 showed positive. She was carrying Minho's child. Terror and joy warred inside her chest in equal measure. Baby. In their dangerous world. With enemies still circling. But also a baby. A tiny person who would be half her, half Minho. A family they'd build together. She walked out to find Minho in his office, working through reports from his various operations. He looked up immediately, something in her expression making him stand and cross to her. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern clear in his voice. "Nothing's wrong," she said, then laughed shakily. "Or maybe everything's about to change. I'm pregnant, Minho. We're having a baby." He went completely still, his expression cycling through shock, fear, and then pure joy so intense it transformed his entire face. "A baby," he repeated, his hands coming to rest gently on her still flat stomach. "We made a baby. Are you sure? Took 3 tests. All positive. We should see a doctor to confirm, but yes, I'm sure." He dropped to his knees right there, pressing his face against her stomach, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for choosing me, for loving me, for giving me a family I never thought I'd deserve. I'm going to be a father. We're going to be parents." She ran her fingers through his hair, her own eyes wet. "Are you happy about this? We hadn't planned it. I know things are still dangerous with your business." "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," Minho said, standing and pulling her close. "I'm terrified and thrilled and already planning how to keep both of you safe for the rest of my life. But yes, I'm happy. So incredibly happy." He kissed her deeply, then pulled back with sudden urgency. "You need to sit down. You should be resting. Should you be standing this much? Is the baby okay? Do you need water? Food? Should I call the doctor right now?" She laughed at his sudden panic. "Minho, I'm pregnant, not made of glass. I'm fine. The baby's fine. We're both fine. But you're adorable when you're worried." He scowled, though his eyes held nothing but love. "I'm not adorable. I'm a feared crime boss. People don't call me adorable." "Your wife does," she teased. "Get used to it." The pregnancy progressed smoothly despite Minho's constant hovering. He hired the best doctors, insisted Amara reduce her physical activities, and looked ready to commit murder any time she felt the slightest discomfort. His mother flew back for the birth, and surprisingly, she seemed genuinely pleased about becoming a grandmother. "You've done well," she told Amara one afternoon while they were preparing the nursery. "My son is happier than I've ever seen him. More stable. You've been good for him, even if your methods are unconventional. I was wrong to judge you so harshly." Amara accepted the apology with grace, understanding that for a woman like Hygiene, admitting error took significant strength. By the time Amara's due date approached, Minho had transformed an entire wing of the penthouse into a secured nursery with enough safety features to protect royalty. Labor started in the middle of the night. Amara woke to sharp pain and her water breaking, and Minho went from deeply asleep to fully alert in seconds. "The hospital," he said, already pulling on clothes and grabbing the pre-packed bags. "We need to get you to the hospital now. Is the baby okay? Are you in pain? How far apart are the contractions?" She laughed even through the discomfort. "Minho, slow down. We have time. First babies take hours usually." "I'm not waiting hours," he said firmly, already on the phone with his personal doctor. "We're going now." The hospital's private wing was ready when they arrived, and Minho refused to leave her side through 12 hours of labor. He held her hand, wiped her forehead, whispered encouragement in Korean and English, and looked ready to fight anyone who suggested he needed to step out. When their daughter finally arrived, screaming and perfect with dark hair and her mother's warm skin tone, Minho cried openly. "She's perfect," he whispered, touching one tiny fist with his finger. "She's absolutely perfect. What should we name her?" They discussed names throughout the pregnancy but never settled on one. Now, looking at her daughter's face, Amara knew. "Bisyo," she said. "It means clever and auspicious in Korean, right? I want her to have a Korean name to honor your heritage. But her middle name should be Grace, after my grandmother. Miss Grace Park." "It's perfect," Minho agreed, then carefully took his daughter into his arms. "Hello Minisio," he said softly in Korean. "I'm your father, and I promise to protect you and your mother with everything I am. You're going to grow up knowing you're loved and valued and free to be whoever you want to be. You're going to be strong like your mother and hopefully wiser than your father. Welcome to the world, little one." The first few weeks of parenthood were exhausting and beautiful. Minho proved surprisingly capable with diaper changes and midnight feedings, though he still looked terrified every time he held his tiny daughter. Amara watched him sing Korean lullabies and rock Minasa to sleep, and fell even more in love with this dangerous man who became so impossibly gentle with his child. His mother stayed for a month, helping with the baby and surprisingly offering wisdom without judgment. One evening, she found Amara alone in the nursery and spoke quietly. "Thank you for giving my son a family. For showing him that life can be about more than power and territory. You've made him human again. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." By the time Minicio was 3 months old, things had settled into a new normal. Minho had successfully restructured his organization to be less hands-on, allowing him to spend more time at home. Lee faction had been absorbed into their operations after Taemin's death, and most of Minho's rivals had learned that targeting his family led to swift and absolute destruction. He was still feared and respected, but now he was also known as a man who'd found something worth protecting beyond power. Amara reopened her restaurant part-time, hiring a manager to handle daily operations while she focused on motherhood and being Minho's partner in the legitimate business ventures he was slowly building as a legacy for their daughter. One evening, 6 months after Minicio's birth, Minho found Amara on the penthouse balcony watching the sunset while their daughter slept peacefully in her bassinet nearby. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned into his warmth. "Happy?" he asked. "So happy," she confirmed. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life. That I went from working alone in a small restaurant to being married to you. Having this beautiful baby, living in this amazing home. Feels like a dream. If it's a dream, then we're both having it," Minho said, kissing her neck. "And I never want to wake up. You saved me that night in the rain, but you keep saving me every single day by choosing to stay, to love me, to build this life with me despite knowing everything I am." "I wouldn't change a single thing," Amara said, turning in his arms to face him. "Not the danger, not the fear, not the crazy way we fell in love so fast it should have been impossible. Because it led to this moment, to this family, to this life we've built together. You're mine, Minho Park, and I'm yours, and I can't imagine it any other way." He kissed her deeply, pouring all his love and devotion into the connection. When they broke apart, both breathless, he pulled a small box from his pocket. "What's this?" she asked. "You already gave me an engagement ring and a wedding band. What more could you possibly give me?" He opened it to reveal a necklace with 3 interlocking circles, each one set with different colored stones, blue, green, and pink. One for each of us, he explained. Family united. I had it custom made. The blue is sapphire like your engagement ring. Green is Minacio's birthstone, and pink is yours. We're connected forever now, the three of us. She let him fasten it around her neck, tears streaming down her face. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. The intensity of it. The way I'd do anything for you and our daughter. I finally understand why you're so protective, why you go to such extremes. Because now I'd burn the world down too if it meant keeping our family safe. Good, Min-ho said fiercely. Because we're in this together. Forever. No matter what comes. No matter what challenges we face. We face them as a team. She kissed him again, and he responded with a passion that had never dimmed between them despite sleepless nights and the chaos of new parenthood. When they finally broke apart, Minacio stirred in her bassinet, making the soft sounds that meant she'd wake soon. They both moved to her immediately, and Min-ho lifted their daughter gently, cradling her with a careful strength that never failed to make Amara's heart swell. Look at her, he whispered in awe. She has your eyes, your strength. She's going to be incredible. She's going to be loved, Amara corrected. Completely and unconditionally loved. That's what matters most. They stood together on the balcony as night fell over Los Angeles. Three people who'd found each other against impossible odds and built something beautiful from darkness and danger. Min-ho thought about that night in the rain when Amara had pulled him from death's door. How she'd held him when he was at his most vulnerable. How she'd chosen to stay when she learned what he truly was. How she'd fought for him, married him, given him a daughter. How she'd transformed his world from cold and violent to warm and full of purpose. Amara thought about the frozen stranger she'd dragged into her storage room. How something had shifted in her chest the moment she'd seen him. How he'd protected her, cherished her, given her a family and a life beyond anything she'd imagined. How he'd shown her that love could be fierce and possessive and still healthy. How he made her feel precious and powerful in equal measure. Minsa yawned in her father's arms, completely unaware of the complicated love story that had led to her existence. Unaware of the danger her parents had survived. Unaware of anything except that she was warm and safe and deeply loved. As the city lights flickered to life below them, Min-ho and Amara shared a look that communicated everything words couldn't express. Gratitude, devotion, promise, forever. This was their family. Born from a chance encounter on a rainy night. Forged in danger and violence. Strengthened by choice and commitment. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was something better. Real. Hard-won. Unbreakable. And absolutely worth every moment of fear and chaos that had led them here. Min-ho pressed a kiss to his daughter's forehead, then to his wife's lips. I love you both more than life itself, he said quietly. You're my everything. My reason for being. My reason for wanting to be better than I was raised to be. Always, Amara promised. We love you too. Now and forever. They stood together as darkness fell completely. A family united against whatever the future might bring. Because they'd learned the most important lesson. That love, real love, the kind built on truth and choice and absolute commitment, could survive anything. Even the dangerous world they'd chosen to navigate together. And as Minasa fell back asleep in her father's arms, surrounded by her parents' love, the city continued its endless rhythm below them. Somewhere in its depths, new dangers were always forming. New threats always emerging. But Min-ho and Amara had learned to face those threats together. As partners, as equals, as two people who'd found their home in each other. The story of the waitress who'd saved a dying mafia boss and ended up saving his soul became something of a legend in their world. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show compassion to a stranger. That sometimes the person you pull from the cold becomes the love of your life. That sometimes the most dangerous men have the gentlest hearts, buried deep beneath layers of survival and violence. And that sometimes love doesn't look like what you expected, but it's exactly what you needed all along. Min-ho adjusted his hold on his sleeping daughter and looked at his wife with eyes full of wonder. Thank you for not walking past me that night. For being brave enough to help a stranger. For changing my entire world. "I'd do it again in a heartbeat," Amara said. 1,000 times over. "Because you're worth it. Our family is worth it. This life we've built is worth every moment of fear and danger." He kissed her again, deep and slow and full of promise. And somewhere in the penthouse, security monitors showed dozens of guards protecting their home, their family, their future. The Kong Empire had transformed from something built on fear alone to something with heart at its center. And it all started because one woman refused to walk past suffering. Because she chose compassion over convenience. Because she saw a man worth saving and fought to save him, even when it put her own life at risk. Their story wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more dangers, more moments where they'd have to choose between safety and staying together. But they'd face it all as they'd faced everything so far, side by side, heart to heart, absolutely unbreakable in their commitment to each other and their family. Minso stirred again, her tiny fist clutching her father's shirt, and both parents smiled. She was their future, their hope, their reminder that love could create something beautiful even in the darkest circumstances. And as the night deepened around them, as the city pulsed with life and danger below, the Kong family stood together on their balcony, 3 hearts beating as one, proof that sometimes the most unlikely love stories become the most powerful. The end. But also the beginning of forever.